Hello everyone, welcome to C.HR with Ariaunstewart. Today I have a special guest, Tanisha and I'm so excited to have her here today. She is the Executive Director of Arise for Social Justice. So Tanisha, can you tell us a little bit about your journey into the nonprofit sector and how you ended up at Arise?
Sure. It's a pleasure to be here first. My nonprofit journey had lots of twists and turns. I have spent actually the majority of my career in corporate spaces, and I got my first taste of the nonprofit sector as a mentor and volunteer at True Colors, which is a organization down in Connecticut that works with LGBTQ youth and their families. So I became a mentor. I worked with young people. I got to see people who I grew to become my friends, in their workspaces, with rainbow boas and having fun and not in cubicles. And I wanted to get into that kind of a space because I worked in a cubicle and I wasn't happy. I made good money, but I wasn't happy. I just couldn't figure out how to get out of my cubicle into that space because I don't know if you know, nobody leaves corporate to go to nonprofit to make a bunch of money. So I couldn't figure out how to make that jump. But then the company that I worked for was bought out by another company, and we were feeling the strain of this merger, and every day was like being on fire. So eventually I left that position, and I remember thinking when I'm driving out of the parking lot that I was so glad I didn't have to go back the next day. All the other things didn't matter. It was just for my health, sanity, well-being, I don't have to come back into this building.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think we get put into situations like that where we're super uncomfortable and we're forced to leave.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if circumstances hadn't played out that way, maybe I'd still work in corporate.
In there, yeah.
But a way was made, and I was intentional after that, and I just never applied for another corporate job. I was like, I know I want to work in the nonprofit sector. I can do this work. How do I translate my corporate skill set into a skill set that makes sense in the nonprofit sector? And I just needed somebody to give me a chance. So I got that at Community Action Youth Programs, which was absolutely fantastic. And during my time there, I enrolled in the master's program at Baypath for nonprofit management, and it was literally having this experience of my education coming to life at work every day in ways that made sense. Yeah, so I got lots of training on trauma, what that looks like in young people, strengths-based approaches, just a great nonprofit management foundation, watching my director and assistant director and the way that they ran the program. So that was one of the best places that I could have landed foundationally. So that was how I got into
how nonprofit. You got into that. Yeah. And what you were saying about most people don't leave corporate to go to nonprofit to make a bunch of money.
No.
I feel like people who are in nonprofit you can still obviously make great money in that sector, but I feel like they're more driven by purpose.
Right.
And the work that they're doing than somebody in the
corporate sector. Right. The work that I did, sure, it was important. To the shareholders, right? But it didn't have this intrinsic value. It didn't spark that joy. It was a totally different experience being a volunteer and working with young people and feeling like I was making a difference, somewhere on some level. And I also feel like nobody comes to nonprofit work by accident. There's something that has gone on, some experience, your personal life, the personal is political, and an experience will turn you into the staunchest advocate. So we don't just show up here randomly.
So you've been a guide, I'm sure, to a lot of young people trying to figure out their life, trying to figure out what next steps are, if they were dealing with trauma or anything. So was there somebody there for you, or was there an organization for you when you were younger that you kind of thought about when you got into this?
I want to say yes and no. The reason that I got into it was for that exact reason, that I didn't have those things.
It was missing.
Not in that way, and if I did, how different would my own life look? and just the importance of it, of being a mentor and just sometimes being a visible representation. The way that I got into the mentoring program, it was like, hey, I've got, masculine identified young people, and they want to know, like, what can their life look like, like future thinking, so it's like these teenagers, and can you see yourself as an adult? But there aren't any adults that look like me.
Do you feel like, did you ever do any classes in psychology or sociology, or were you able to connect more with them from a personal perspective, or like, what was your educational background in those topics?
My undergrad degree is in social and behavioral science and health in diverse populations. So
that part.
I actually started out, I wanted to be an OBGYN. I think that delivering babies is amazing.
Yeah.
And when any baby takes its first breath, like, all the hope in the world is like right there with that one breath. But organic chemistry melted my brain.
Oh my God!
It's literally, nope, this is not going to happen. So, but I knew that as a healthcare provider or not, I wanted to really be able to connect with people.
Yeah.
Beyond the basics, like what makes people tick. Like, if I'm a healthcare provider, like, how can I get you to, take this medicine that you need to take, while understanding that you're from a community that feels like all doctors are quacks, or like, I'm not gonna listen. Like, how can I tailor the message to get you to do the things that you need to do for your own health, right? And I've been able to take that same concept and apply it into other spaces.
Nice.
In my work. So, because again, like, how can I deliver this message and get you to do the things that you need to do for yourself? How can you get activated? How can you, figure out how to be responsible? Like, how can we make this work for you?
Right.
What's the barrier, right?
Yeah. So as an executive director, when I think executive in the corporate culture, sometimes I think far removed, and then sometimes depending on the business, like, some people are more like, but you sound like you're a very hands-on person, so can you tell me what that looks like at an executive level?
So, executive director sounds really great, right? And probably in these corporate spaces and even larger nonprofits, it probably is that thing. Like, I'm, far removed, but I wanted to not be far removed, like, intentionally. And I had really great models. So when I was at youth programs, the director of the program knew what was happening, would come into the different programs, introduce herself, had worked with young people. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm the ED and I'm going to tell you how to do your job, but I've never done your job. It wasn't that. And I was intentional about that because in corporate spaces, I'd had that experience. You're my manager. You have to critique my job, but you don't even know how to do my job.
Exactly.
And I was like, I'm not going to have that. And in a leadership position, like, I don't feel that there's anything that I'm above doing. I have made coffee, I've cleaned the toilet, I have done pest control, been in the IT department.
My goodness.
This is what needs to happen, like, especially in a smaller organization. It's like, listen, I'm here, I do what needs to get done. And I look at my role as being, a servant leader.
Yeah.
Right? And not to just create followers, but to create more leaders and to get to help people reach their truest, best potential.
And their goals. I remember when I was in high school, I used to run track, and we would always, like, our favorite coaches were the ones who would run the miles with us.
Yes!
Like, you have those coaches who will stand at the sidelines and be like, with the clock, like, go. Like, no, they were with us, like, the ones that were really with you. Those are the ones that you can really go to and be like, okay, I know you understand where I'm coming from.
Running, because in the time that I finished my work tasks and did some other stuff, I was like, oh, I got time to go run.
Yeah.
So
my gosh, that's that's awesome.
So,
I feel like running is just such a freeing, like, it just, like, affects your whole body, and it just makes you feel good when you're able to accomplish it, That's awesome.
It's the mental and physical challenge together.
Yes.
So,
so that brings me into, like, the work-life balance conversation. I can imagine at an executive level with a business that really needs you to be hands-on, that you are constantly busy, and working really hard at all times. So like, how do you make sure that you make time for yourself and taking care of yourself?
I literally do it. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. The transition into nonprofit taught me about self-care. And I think part of that, when we have this self-care conversation, is cultural. I mean, that wasn't anything that was talked about in the home that I came from. I mean, you know, my mom's like, yeah, I got things to do. And it didn't matter, like, like, what do you mean? I mean, my dad still says, like, he'll sleep when he's dead, right?
Oh my gosh, my dad says that.
Right, exactly. So here we are with these cultural things on us, and, you know, the idea that we could rest, care for ourselves, not just keep working. I mean, there's this concept of John Henryism where, like, we would just overcome these adversities and just keep working, or the Timex, take a licking and keep on ticking. And that's also what I got in my time at corporate, right? Like, I worked in the billing department. Nobody cares about your feelings. Get the bills out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So then I go over to this nonprofit space, and they want to talk about feelings and your whole self, and I'm like, what are we doing? And this, like, well, what do you do for self-care? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what? I work. That's what I do. I work. And it had gotten to the point where my then director was like, listen, I'm gonna need you to do this. I'm gonna write you up. Like, it's that serious. I'm like, so wait a minute, wait. You're going to write me up because I don't have anything that I do that, like, counts as taking care of myself or having this break.
Like that.
And she's like, yep, you're gonna find something. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna find something. So my self-care doesn't usually look like everybody else's self-care. It was going to the car wash. I was like, I have a car wash pass, right? And I found a meditation that lasted as long as the car wash. So I would go in there and close my eyes, put on my little meditation, and go through, like, and it was like, for as many things that I was responsible for in my life, as an employee, as a mom, as a partner, all those things, that 1 minute and change in the car wash, I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to steer, I didn't have to pay attention, that's it. And that's always been my go-to, right? And then thinking about that, like, it is a blip in time where I don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
I can relinquish all of this. And there's also the metaphor, your car goes in dirty, comes out on the other side, it's clean, and I can go as many times as I want.
Right, going through this vortex. So
right, and
on the other side.
I think that the car wash folks thought that a wash pass was going to be like when you have your gym membership.
Yeah.
No, I go to the car wash every day. Sometimes twice a day. Even 3 times.
So you're that person with the perfectly clean, shiny car
all
going through
the
the car
time.
wash.
That's right, all the time. Those are the things where, like, I ride a motorcycle. That's self-care, the way it feels.
That's cool, yeah.
I like to garden, play in the dirt, which is like a later discovery in life. I like to cook and bake, and, like, really in this way, like, it's not a chore. I like to cook.
Yeah.
And, you know, for folks to have that response, like, oh, that's good. Like, you made that? Yes, I did. Right? So,
that's awesome.
I enjoy that. Like, sometimes I feel like I'm really a kid at heart. Like, I'm the one that's in the store, you know, pressing the buttons on all the toys and making them make all the sounds.
Oh,
or
my
if there's
gosh.
the little popper thing, like, I have been known to run up and down the aisle, you know, with the popper.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and just really taking the time. Like, I'm not going to do this, or like, I really don't watch the news. That's intentional, again, for energy, peace of mind. Like, that's just too much.
It can be like, too much and start affecting you outside of when you're watching it. It's like, nah, I'm carrying this with me.
Right, and just to know, like, I know without having to watch every broadcast that there are lots of rotten things that are happening outside. Yeah. It's not new. I think we also carry it with us internally. Like, that's that ancestral knowledge and pain. Like, I don't need to see it. I know.
See it every time.
And just blocking it out. Like, I need to take a vacation. And I remember spending some time with my therapist. I do have a therapist. And I think, again, culturally in our communities, the things that we need to talk about, prioritizing mental health,
Awesome. If you
go
need
to therapy,
go.
stay
Please
prayed up, take your medicine if you need to.
Yes.
And I kept saying week after week, like, oh, I need to take a vacation, I need to take a vacation. And finally she was like, why don't you do it right now? Just sit right here in this office, block out the time, and then it's done. And that's literally what I had to do. And because I just kept saying, like, oh, I just don't have time, and this week this is scheduled and that's scheduled.
Yeah.
If we're not intentional about these things
and taking breaks,
they won't happen.
Yeah.
And then you'll wind up in a situation where you're like, I've literally worked every day this year.
Absolutely. I'm in work all the time with people who are like, oh, I have hours and hours and hours of vacation, and it's like,
take your time.
Please take your time. I feel like in the United States we just run on like this no sleep, hustle every single day type of attitude, and there are a lot of other countries where it's like a normal part of life to like take a family vacation. When you're taking lunch, like taking a
lunch is like 3 hours long.
3 hours, and you go home and you spend time with your family,
right.
And then you come back and then you're refreshed and you can like get through your day. Because I feel like, you know, and now I feel like when you have a position where you have kind of like just get the work done type of position, because you have jobs where you have to clock in and you're on that certain time, those can be very, very difficult to manage. But if you do get to the point where you're like a salary employee or something, and you can like really maneuver your day, it's like you know, I'm gonna get the bulk of my work done in the beginning of the week, so by the end I can like relax a little bit and take it easy. And I think it's really interesting, but it makes perfect sense that in a non-profit sector where you are taking care of people and like working with people, that it's important that you have your own self-care, because how can you teach something that you don't do?
Right.
You know, same thing.
Pour from an empty cup.
Absolutely.
I think, and I might get a lot of flack for this, but it's like in the community of organizing, folks will do amazing work, but they just work, and aren't really talking about or thinking about self-care.
Yeah.
And I've even asked this question to seasoned organizers and gotten the pushback of like, nah, you know, the self-care is being out there and doing this and doing that. But then on the flip side, the same person is talking about like, I got these health problems and this and that. It's like, but that is the byproduct of not taking care of yourself.
That's the truth, yeah.
Right? Like, you can't do this work if you're not here.
Exactly.
And I'm sorry, in this capitalistic society, you can pass away and a week later your job will be posted.
It will.
So
that's so sad.
But it did not lie.
True.
But okay. And so
they're worried about their bottom line.
We tell the truth here. So I'm like, listen, I need you to take care of yourself. If you are taking care of other people, statistically, the burnout rate is about 2 years.
Wow.
In a service profession, it's about 2 years, right? So we need to take care of ourselves, and especially showing up to this work. Like, this is how I show up to work. I'm a Black woman, and I run a grassroots nonprofit that focuses on the rights of poor and low-income folks that are mostly Black and brown. And to be a Black person in this country, seeing the things that we see and having that experience, like to paraphrase John Baldwin, is to be in a rage all the time. In a rage, terrified, maybe sometimes wondering like, what the heck? And that's stressful.
And I do have to ask you, because you're working with people who are going through probably constant stress sometimes in their lives, and then to what you were saying about not watching the news sometimes because it can be a lot. How do you make sure that you're not taking all of that with you? Like, I know I'm personally an empath.
So you gotta really work.
Yeah.
Again, so this nonprofit journey and experience. So like starting out in a space where self-care was pressed upon me, and learning about trauma stewardship, which is about that there's the immediate trauma, there's a secondary trauma, there's tertiary trauma. It's like these things aren't happening to me, but I'm hearing about them. And being in spaces where supervision was always given, so you have a place to unload this stuff. Team meetings, so it's like one person isn't carrying it by themselves. After I left youth programs, I worked at Fenway Health. I was the Western Mass advocate for the Violence Recovery Program. So I worked with LGBTQ victims and survivors of violence. Wow. So literally every day, that's what I was hearing. But again, lots of supervision, self-care, staff meetings, and just being able to unload that somewhere, because you can't carry it by yourself. I mean, you can, but then that's not really healthy for you.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of structure and, prioritization around learning how to help folks who've experienced trauma and how to take care of yourself with that secondary trauma. And I brought that into the Arise space because, again, it's like I've got these fantastic organizers and not really focused on that aspect of the work, but it's a part of the work because folks are coming in with these experiences. I mean, poverty is violence.
Yeah.
Any which way we try to divvy it up, explain it, poverty is violence.
So do you feel like in being able to do that, like I know you said not having to carry it alone, but do you ever feel, and this is like, because I have a lot of friends who work in like similar sectors and I just can never understand, like, do you have to disconnect, or do you feel like when you go in with someone that you can really be all the way there with them?
I can be all the way there.
Yeah.
But then it's also understanding, like, I mean, in order to successfully do the work, you have to be vulnerable, but you also have to know about keeping on your armor and what belongs to someone else and what belongs to you. The other part of this, especially right now, it's like, I'm not getting a pass.
Yeah.
Because I do this work.
Yeah.
COVID is not like, oh wait, you're fine, you do this work, it's okay. Racism is like, nah, I'm not gonna fool with you because you're doing this work, and you're not gonna be impacted by these horrible things that are happening because you do social justice work. No.
If only.
Right? If only it worked that way. I can assure you it does not. And it has felt like at times that there are folks who miss that part.
Yeah.
And in other elements of doing social justice work and these movements, it's like there are well-meaning folks who really overlook, like, I've got these other things going on in my life. Not that I don't care about this one particular thing. There are like 10 other things ahead of that will kill me first.
Right.
So I got to navigate through that. Or, maybe I'm working 2 jobs and I'm trying to make the rent, and now I have to be a teacher because my kids are home because Zoom school is a thing, and we're also in the middle of this pandemic, and I'm an essential sacrificial worker, and because language matters.
It does.
Right? So people are navigating through a lot of different things, and it is hard. There are like, I can do the work, disconnect it, but at the same time, the gap between the work that I do and the life that I live is like this small right now. Yeah. Because I don't get to turn this off.
Right. You're constantly
so, and when you see the world as it is, like, that's hard. Yeah. Because you do wish you could turn it off and just, a funny movie could be a funny movie, and you're not like, well, why did they put this thing, and why, like, the social, like, I want to just be able to laugh and like not do this, not be that person in a space. And we need that, and again, that requires being intentional and surrounding yourself with people who support you and see you, the wholeness of who you are, and cultivating gratitude and joy, like, in our lives. And I really feel that that's important, for Black and brown people. Like, that's a form of resistance, right? To exist, to be healthy and alive, and to experience joy. Like, we have a right to that. Like, that's what our ancestors, they wanted rest. They wanted joy. Right? And for us to have connection and not all this mayhem, right? So I feel like we have to work on that. Like, we have our healing work to do, like, in our community.
Well, thank you so much. I feel like you brought such a peace to this space today. Like, even just talking to you, like, I understand why you are in the line of work that you are in. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for what you do for our community. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you everyone who has tuned in for C.HR today. I want to give a shout out to the Association of Black Business and Professionals for sponsoring this show. The Association of Black Business and Professionals is a space where all business owners can come together and network and learn from each other and share resources. So thank you guys all so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.